Hello friends and subscribers, welcome back to the Daniel Rosehill Podcast, brought to you by myself, Daniel Rosehill, bringing you this video/podcast tonight from Jerusalem. I am in central Jerusalem, I'll leave it at that, because no, I don't want random people showing up at my front door, but I will say that I live in the city centre, and since a few months ago, and it's been kind of a weird adaptation. There's a lot of noise from traffic that is slightly infuriating, but it's also kind of easy to just walk out of the house and go to a bar. So there's pros and cons, you could say, and it's an adventure. So I just want to say at the very outset that I'm going to be putting timestamps on this podcast/video because I'm just ad-libbing this. I'm not doing any script, and I know I have a tendency to go off on tangents like most people do with ADHD, I think. I think it's an ADHD trait. That's my theory anyway. So because I do that, I'll be adding timestamps. So if you want to say, hey, this is totally irrelevant, jump ahead, or just close the video if you say this is all junk. But if you clicked in, maybe there's some hope you listen to it. I want to say at the outset, I'm just going to talk about something I'm very excited about from a technology standpoint. I've just figured out how the podcasting feature on YouTube is actually supposed to work. And I did not know that, and now I'm really impressed, and I'm also really excited. That's why I say I'm on a creative high, because I'm going to be actually podcasting like regularly this year, which is something I haven't done because I have been wedded to the idea of creating video content on YouTube, and I'm like, well, I don't really have time for both. So my rationale has always been that it's better if you just have time to do one. This is probably what I still would recommend to people. I would actually do YouTube, and here's my rationale, is you can listen to YouTube videos pretty easily. Especially, and this is not any kind of paid promotion, I'm just a happy subscriber. I have YouTube Premium, and with YouTube Premium, which doesn't cost a lot, you get background play. You also get no ads, which is fantastic, and you get background play. So I literally don't watch like conventional television. I haven't watched conventional TV for years, if I'm going to be honest, but I don't even watch Netflix anymore, barely, because I have this YouTube Premium, and I can use YouTube for listening to video content as podcasts, and I can also just watch stuff streaming. So between those, like, YouTube has me covered, basically. I don't know what I pay. I think it's like $10 a month. I mean, I do know what I pay, because if it was like more, if it was, 100, I would know about the expense. It's something like $10 a month, and I get just such insane value out of it. Like, I'm literally watching hours of YouTube per day, no exaggeration. I look forward every day to discovering new YouTube creators. I've been a huge YouTube fan for way longer than I've been a YouTube creator. So part of the fun I have of creating on YouTube is knowing that I'm like kind of, I wouldn't say giving back, but like putting back into this ecosystem that I continue to love and think is amazing. There's so much good stuff on YouTube. All right, what I want to talk about today, the podcast. Yes, I'm getting distracted here. So the podcasting feature will enable me, or how it's supposed to work. I thought it was just like intended for video podcasts, that if you wanted to use YouTube to make a video podcast, you could use this new podcasting feature. It's not that new, but it's still pretty new. In fact, I'm going to be even more disorganized and going to type this into Google. When did YouTube introduce podcast feature? I'm pretty sure that it wasn't so long ago. YouTube's podcast page was launched in July 2022, but yeah, it's only kind of in 2023 that this feature's begun to pick up a little bit of traction. So it still is like relatively new in the grand scheme of YouTube. Anyway, what I thought it was like, okay, you can host a video podcast on YouTube and you can give it a podcast page. And if you're also distributing that as an audio podcast, that makes sense, right? That is not all it can do. That is something you can use it for, but it's not actually the most, in my opinion, the most impressive part of the feature. The most impressive part of the feature is that you can connect it to an RSS feed if you do an audio podcast, and YouTube will automatically, through its majingly nature, that's the word I'm going for, majingly, it has this majingly stuff going on, and it can take your cover art and your audio and it will make an audio video. Like, when you have those, so if you're putting podcasts on YouTube, I've been doing this for years, periodically, and I've always felt it was kind of like an abuse of YouTube, which I've realized was unnecessary worrying, because YouTube are actually encouraging, not only are they encouraging people to do this, they've actually launched a feature to make this work even better. The reason I thought it was abusive is I'm like, well, if you're just like, what's the point of a video podcast if you just have a static image? It feels like that's not what YouTube was built for. It was built for video distributing. How on earth YouTube manages to just hold a just vast amount of content, like an infinite amount of content, I do not understand it. And I think it would be such a good documentary, because when you think about other tech services in cloud computing, YouTube is a total anomaly, right? Name me one other form of cloud hosted content that you can just send an unlimited amount of content up there. And I don't think there are any, right? If you go on Google Drive, if you just like start throwing terabytes of files up to Google will eventually say, hey, you need to pay money, which makes abundant sense because it costs money to store stuff on servers in the cloud. Podcast hosting, right? You might get a free podcast host which offers a little bit of storage, but if you're going to store any substantial amount of data, the podcast host will say you're going to have to pay us money because we spend money on storing your stuff. So how YouTube offers this unlimited free service, I have no idea, but they've clearly got it figured out that they can just like store basically everything. So the podcast feature will on the fly duplicate your audio episode and make it into a video. The process of doing this offline is so dumb that it's why major reason actually why I didn't want to really do my podcast was because I would feel the need to put them up on YouTube, as that's my like main social network or main platform. But you have to like open a video editor and add an image, or you can use FFmpeg if you're a little bit geekier. But either way, it's a really stupid process and inefficient. And now that you can just magically record a podcast, upload it through your, wherever you're hosting your podcast, connect that, you create a podcast on YouTube, you tell YouTube, here's the RSS feed, and YouTube will then completely automatically create and publish videos, which is crazy and very powerful, right? You can actually automatically publish YouTube videos just by making podcasts, basically. Without needing to use any third-party applications or hacks. So if you already have a YouTube audience and you want to add podcasting to the mix, my only hesitation is what my YouTube audience, because I have, at the time of recording this, I have like 3,300 subscribers. So look, I'm under no illusions. It's still very small, but at the same time, I kind of know my regular viewers by name in the comments, and I'm not sure how you guys feel about this. Please let me know if you want to leave a comment. How do you feel about this YouTube channel is now going to be not just YouTube videos, but blended videos and podcasts? In any event, I think it's a really cool feature that YouTube have introduced, and I'm eager to actually use it and happy to be a guinea pig. Even if some people hate it, I'm going to be merging my content in this manner. And it's going to give me, I think, more diversity as a creator, because there are days where I'm exhausted. Like right now, it's like 10 o'clock at night, almost 10 o'clock, and I've had a long day and I just don't feel like getting in front of a camera. But oddly, it's often at these moments where I'm like at the end of the day that I actually have the easiest time creating audio content, because I'm like relaxed and I'm like happy to talk into a microphone so long as I don't have the pressure of a camera to staring at me. So that is what's going to be happening. By the way, the videos are going to be replicated on podcast format. Like if there's a great video, the other way around, if there's a great video that I think, hey, this will be good for the podcast, I will have to manually do that. Be cool when that can happen automatically. Although, if you think about it, that would if it did work automatically, that would have an infinite loop, because you would publish a video that automatically became a podcast, then automatically became a video. So that would not work. I think I've had too much coffee that I actually realized that that's a problem. I'm not sure people have realized that, but if there was this automatic YouTube to podcast function and you had the podcast to YouTube function, you would end up with an infinite loop of the same episode being repeatedly resyndicated between the two platforms. That would be pretty funny. All right, so now that I've talked about the fact that the podcast will be infiltrating my YouTube channel and how amazing this new feature is, let me talk about what I actually came to talk about. So, okay, this is again unscripted and whatever, and I'm just kind of like shooting from the hip here. So I saw this kind of a few friends recently have shared these videos during the rounds on social media about Arabs or Muslims who are supportive of Israel, right? And there's usually something like an Arab who supports Israel, or a Muslim for Israel, or like a Muslim Zionist. And, you know, look, I've been involved in kind of the world of Israel advocacy or following all this stuff for a very, very long time. Since, I don't know, I'm going to say I was like 16. I was pretty young when I set up a Israel advocacy thing called Irish for Israel. And that was when I was still living in Ireland. And as time's gone on, and as I've grown up and moved to actually live in Israel, I've kind of distanced myself a lot from the world of Hasbara because I've kind of come to see that nothing is really black and white in life, including this conflict. And my main criticism of Hasbara is that it forces both people to, and I've made this point before, see things in black and white. But as long as I've been observing the Hasbara world, I've seen this kind of metaphor of the Muslim supporter of Israel or the Arab supporter of Israel. It's been something that has been very strategically used in Israeli public diplomacy or Hasbara for many, many years, right? Now, my criticism, and the reason, this doesn't have to be actually very long for me to make this point, because I think it's quite a simple point. A lot of us people in the pro-Israel community, when we're currently debating folks on the other side on Twitter, or we're seeing what they tweet, we see a lot of people under the illusion that most Jews aren't Zionists, right? I've seen actually, I think it was, there was an Irish MEP called, it was the height of absolute self-illusion. I've generally started watching what Ireland and Irish people are reacting to Israel less and less, because frankly, I just got tired of it. But I came across this video of Mick Wallace, who's one of the Irish MEPs, saying that he was accused by a Swedish MEP of spreading anti-Semitism, and he said, no, it's not anti-Semitism. Jewish people the whole world over are rising up against Zionism and rejecting Israel. And that to me was just the absolute height of delusion, that like this guy actually could believe that, because sure, I mean, there are, of course, Jews who are against Israel and against Zionism, but I think for someone who is Jewish, you would see that and say, that guy's talking through his ass. That is not correct. And I think a lot of people right now are speaking for Jews, saying that, you know, most Jews are against Zionism. And to the best of my knowledge, there isn't any polling of the world Jewish body stating exactly what percentage of them adhere to Zionism or self-identify Zionists. But I wouldn't be surprised if it was a very high percentage who are Zionists. And I think it's these anti-Israel people who are kind of obsessed with this fake idea that exists in their head, because I think it makes it more comfortable for them to conflate Judaism and Zionism, right? If they say they're extremely anti-Israel, they say, well, yeah, my anti-Israelism is not based on anti-Semitism, and also look at the Jews. Most of the Jews are also not with Israel, right? And that bucketing, that tidy delineation, I think really only exists in their own head. It doesn't really accord with reality. So that's what I think when I see people on Twitter saying, you know, wow, there's so many Jews around the world who are anti-Israel. Look at Jews, True Torah Jews. I think that's their website for, it's like an Torah Carta group or Satmar. But you have these Jewish groups who are anti-Zionist, right? And there's some guy like David Weiss, I think is his name, Rabbi David Weiss, and he goes around meeting with, the Ayatollah and all the most extreme Israel-hating people in the world, like Hamas, whatever, and he delivers the message that the Jewish people are against Zionism, or true Jews are against Zionism. And I and most Jews who are Zionists find that absolutely noxious. When this guy speaks in our name, and when people take this very, very small minority of Jews and say, hey, look, Jews are not Zionists because there's ABC, there's this guy or this guy or this guy, and they lash onto these selective examples. Now, my problem with the Israeli Arabs, the what I'm going to call the good Arabs, and in this kind of metaphor, I think I'm going to call this episode my problem with good Arabs and good Jews, is that for these anti-Israel people, these are the good Jews, the anti-Israel Jews, the Jews who protest Zionism and to burn the flag of the state of Israel. Maybe not to that extent, but for a lot of them, yes, that's what they want. These are the good Jews. And they say, we have no problem with Jews here and I get, again, sorry to localize this to a great extent to Ireland, but I just hear this so much from people there saying, yeah, in Ireland, we don't have any problem with Jews. We just have a problem with Zionists. And my response to that, I did a recent episode saying that I view Judaism and Zionism as intrinsically connected. But these guys in the kind of follow up to this fictitious online argument will say, yeah, okay, you're a Zionist, but you're a Zionist Jew, but loads of Jews aren't. Look at this Notori Karda guy in London or in New York burning the Israeli flag. And my response to that in this fictitious debate is those guys are a tiny minority and they're also batshit crazy. But let's just leave the batshit crazy thing to one side. They're just a really, really small minority, and you're very selectively latching on to this fact to basically devalidate the majority of Jewish opinion, which is Zionism. Now, I'm circling back finally to my point, which is why I have a problem with our selective laser focusing on good Arabs, because we're doing exactly to the Muslim world and to Arabs what we hate when people do to us about Jews, right? We don't like when people take these fringe minority Jews and claim that they represent all Jews. We kind of regard that as tokenism, and we find it intellectually dishonest. So if we are feeling that way and that's our opinion, I think it's totally hypocritical for us to latch on to these examples of Muslims, Arab outliers, because again, just as there isn't any sentiment of world Jewish opinion towards Zionism, I'm not aware of any world sentiment of Muslims. There's just too many of them in the first place. That would be in a gigantic population. To get any meaningful sample size would be almost impossible. Surveying that population, saying what their feelings are about Israel, maybe also about Jews, but let's just say about Israel to keep it a bit less controversial. And I think that the vast majority would be broadly anti-Israel in their viewpoints. So when we're highlighting a couple of voices, we're engaging in exactly the type of selective tokenism that we dislike when people use that for Jews and say, hey, look at these Jews who happen to be anti-Israel. I think that we should refrain from highlighting. I'm not saying that, we look to make a video about an Arab Jewish supporter for Israel, but I'm very wary of this kind of echo chamber that we create when we spotlight these rare individuals who aren't representative of the mainstream and then kind of hold them out as the token good Arab, because I see it as just the complete reflection, literally a mirror image of what we hate when people hold up these so-called good Jews and use them as a stand and offer us their acceptance in their group if we can adhere to the image of a good Jew. And I think we kind of are guilty doing the same thing when we say this guy is a good Arab. You can be accepted in good graces among the Jewish community and you'll be feted and loved if you can just mold yourself to the ideology of a good Arab. But if you support Arab nationalism and pan-Arab nationalism and support the Palestinian cause too vigorously, you're cast out of that role as a good Arab and you're once again the bad Arab. So I really don't like that. So I think that's about as clearly as I can make this point at 10 p.m. before I've had my dinner. This was done partially to get out that opinion, which is a fringe opinion, I know, but I've never been known for making I like my contrarian opinions, and I figure that less people make them, so I kind of feel like if you have one, just get it out there. This is partially done to get out that contrarian opinion and also to test out whether the YouTube podcasting feature, I'm always worried when technology works too well. I'm like, it worked great the first time, let's just give it a second go to make sure this actually does work. So this is partially done for that reason too. If you see this podcast on my YouTube channel as a video, all is well. This has happened automatically, and this will make my day, and I've no reason to think it won't. So that's it for this episode of the Daniel Rosehill Podcast. Let me know what you thought about it, whether you're catching this on the world of podcatching apps or on YouTube. If you would like to get in touch with me for whatever reason, do drop me a line. It's public at danielrosehill.com. In 2024, I would just say that I would like to do more interviews. I did a few interviews last year. I did one with a pro-Israel guy in Ireland. I did one with people doing FIRE, get financially independent, retire early. I actually really love doing those. So if you have an idea for a good interview subject for me, or you'd like to be shamelessly self-promotional and offer yourself, because in 2024 there is no such thing as being shamelessly self-promotional, then do get in touch at that email address. I'd love to hear from you. Thanks a lot for listening today. If you want to get the podcast directly, subscribe on Spotify, Google Podcasts. It's called, one more time, the Daniel Rosehill Podcast. Until the next time, have a good day.